Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're joining us today because we are going on a real deep dive into mastering our daily routines. Look, if you've ever felt super frustrated because you just can't seem to make those good habits stick, or you literally can't shake the bad ones, you are in exactly the right place. Think of me as your coach today. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of human behavior, and by the end of this, you are going to have a clear, totally actionable toolkit to transform your life step by step.
So let me ask you, what positive change would you genuinely like to make in your life right now? Maybe you want to eat a bit healthier. Maybe you want to finally read more books, learn a new language, or, master the clarinet. We all have these big aspirations. But whatever changes you're thinking of, actually executing them and sticking to them long term is way easier said than done, right? Just wanting to eat more salad doesn't actually mean you'll do it. Saying you'll read more doesn't mean you won't just end up binging your favorite shows anyway. There's this huge gap between knowing what we want and actually doing it.
But honestly, that is exactly where habits come into play. Today, our roadmap is based on the absolute game-changing insights from James Clear's bestseller, Atomic Habits. The fundamental, life-altering premise here is that small habits can have a remarkably big impact on your life. You see, you don't need some massive, exhausting overhaul. You don't just try to change your behavior. You actually shift your entire identity through tiny, repeatable changes. It's not about just wanting to read a book. It's about becoming a reader, one tiny little habit at a time.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the power of tiny changes.
To really wrap our heads around this, I want you to imagine an airplane getting ready to take off from Los Angeles, and its intended destination is New York City. The pilot enters all the right coordinates, and they take off. But shortly after, the pilot accidentally shifts the plane's nose by just 3.5 degrees. Now, 3.5 degrees, that is practically nothing. It's just a few feet. Literally nobody on board would even notice. But because that tiny change compounds over the entire width of the United States, that plane is absolutely not landing in New York. It's going to land in a completely different city, like Washington, D.C.
Just like that airplane, we rarely notice the tiny changes in our daily lives because, well, they leave a completely negligible immediate impact. Think about it. If you eat a whole family-sized pizza for dinner tonight, you aren't going to instantly become overweight by tomorrow morning. On the flip side, if you're totally out of shape and you go for a 20-minute jog today, you're still going to be out of shape tomorrow. But if we repeat these small behaviors day after day, our choices compound. A year of daily pizza yields a vastly different physical destination than a year of daily 20-minute jogs. You simply won't see the impact in real time, but your trajectory is what truly matters here.
Which brings us to Section 2, the science of habits.
This actually takes us all the way back to the 19th century. A psychologist named Edward Thorndike ran this wild experiment where he placed cats inside a black puzzle box. Now, at first, the cats did exactly what you'd expect a trapped cat to do. They desperately scrambled, clawed at the walls, sniffing around looking for an escape. But eventually, purely by accident, they'd press a little lever that opened a door. Thorndike then took those successful cats and put them right back in the box. After 20 or 30 attempts, the cats totally stopped the frantic scrambling. They just walked straight over, pressed the lever, and escaped. The average time dropped to just 6 seconds. The behavior had become completely automated.
Decades of research since then have basically proven that every single habit we have is built on the exact same 4-step loop those cats experienced. First, there's a cue, which triggers you to act. Let's say you walk into a pitch-black room. That's the cue. Second is the craving. You have a strong desire to see. Third is your response, the actual action. You instinctively flick the light switch. And finally, the reward. Boom, the room lights up, giving you that feeling of relief. Cue, craving, response, reward. This loop completely dominates our lives, from brushing our teeth to driving our cars.
Once you actually understand those 4 steps, you can start hacking them. Let's get into Section 3, designing your environment. If you want to build a good habit, you have got to make the cue incredibly obvious. Let's say your goal is to learn the guitar. If you pack that guitar tightly inside its case and shove it all the way into the back of a closet, you are actively hiding your cue. You are never going to practice. Instead, you need to hack your environment. Take the guitar out of the cupboard, put it on a stand, and place it right in the middle of your living room. Make it literally impossible to miss. By designing your environment this way, you're putting your cues front and center so you don't have to rely purely on willpower. And to make those cues even stronger, you need what's called an implementation intention. Look, most of us are far too vague. We say things like, oh, I'm going to learn guitar sometime this week, and then we just sort of cross our fingers and hope it happens. But hope is not a strategy. An implementation intention introduces a crystal clear plan of action. Instead of being vague, you say, on Monday at 8 a.m., I will practice guitar in the living room. You pair that obvious visual cue with a specific time and place, making the trigger totally foolproof.
Moving right along to Section 4, making good habits stick.
We humans are absolutely wired to seek out rewards. But here's the fascinating part. The brain releases dopamine, our pleasure chemical, not just when we actually experience a reward, but when we anticipate it. Desiring something is almost on par with getting it. We can actually use this trick to make hard habits attractive by bundling things we want to do with things we need to do. If you need to hit the gym but you really just want to read the latest gossip magazines, promise yourself you will only read those magazines while pedaling on the stationary bike. Or, if you dread making tough sales calls but love watching sports, commit to watching a half hour of ESPN only after you dial your 10th prospect. Make the hard task the gateway to the fun one.
The crucial point here is making the response as easy as humanly possible, and this is where the brilliant 2-minute rule comes into play. You can basically distill absolutely any behavior into a habit that takes less than 2 minutes. If you want to become a reader, do not commit to reading a whole book a week right out of the gate. That is way too much friction. Instead, commit to reading just 2 pages a night. By shrinking the commitment, you guarantee you'll actually show up, and showing up consistently is how the habit actually takes root in your brain.
Now let's flip the script. Section 5, breaking bad habits.
Habit building is absolutely a two-way street. When we want to build a good habit, we make the cues obvious and we reduce the friction. But when we want to kill a bad habit, we must actively do the exact opposite. We have to hide the cues and introduce as much friction as possible. Basically, make it incredibly annoying to do the wrong thing.
Let me give you a super practical example. If you want to stop mindlessly wasting time watching TV every evening, introduce some friction. Unplug the TV from the wall after you use it. Take the batteries out of the remote control and go put them in a drawer in a completely different room. Suddenly, turning on the TV isn't this automated, unthinking reflex anymore. You actually have to physically get up, hunt for the batteries, plug in the cord. And that tiny bit of physical friction is often just enough to break the mindless cycle and make you stop and ask, wait, do I actually even want to watch something right now?
You can also leverage social friction and accountability. There's a great example from the source material about a man who wanted to lose weight. So he literally drafted and signed a contract with his wife and his personal trainer. If he failed to track his food for the day, he had to immediately hand his trainer $100. If he failed to weigh in each week, he owed his wife $500. Because we are social animals who deeply care about our reputation, adding immediate, painful costs, both financial and social, to our bad behaviors is an incredibly powerful motivator.
Let's bring it all home. Section 6, Summary and Action Steps.
To tie all of this together, I really want to share a powerful story about a public health researcher named Stephen Luby. Back in the 1990s, Luby was working in a neighborhood in Karachi, Pakistan. He knew that simple hand washing with soap was absolutely essential to reducing deadly illnesses in the area. And the locals knew this too. But as we discussed earlier, knowing just isn't enough. They simply weren't turning that knowledge into a daily habit.
But here is the crazy part. Luby ended up achieving a massive 52% drop in diarrhea, a 48% drop in pneumonia, and a 35% drop in skin infections among the local children. I mean, those are staggering, life-saving numbers. So, what was his grand secret to finally getting the hand-washing habit to stick? His secret? Nice soap. That's it. He worked with a brand to introduce a premium, free soap into the neighborhood. It lathered beautifully and it smelled absolutely delightful. Suddenly, everyone was washing their hands constantly because it was an instantly pleasing, satisfying activity. You see, our human brains evolved in an environment where we needed immediate returns, food, shelter, safety right this second. We struggle with long-term goals because the reward is delayed. Luby essentially proved that if you want a long-term habit to stick, you absolutely must engineer a way to make it immediately satisfying in the present moment. And this leads us to your final, most actionable tool for today, habit stacking. This is exactly how you create immediate momentum. You don't need to try and carve out a brand new chunk of your busy day. Instead, identify a habit you already do completely effortlessly, like, say, drinking a cup of coffee every single morning. Then, simply stack your new, tiny habit right on top of it. Say to yourself, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 2 minutes. You are basically using the established momentum of the coffee to pull the meditation along with it. Or combine this with immediate rewards. If your goal is to save money and eat out way less, every time you successfully cook a meal at home, immediately transfer $50 into a savings account labeled Trip to Europe. The instant satisfaction of watching that balance go up provides the exact immediate kick your brain needs. So we've seen that the real secret to remarkable results isn't about making massive, agonizing changes overnight. It's simply about shifting your trajectory by just a few degrees, making your cues obvious, increasing the friction for your bad habits, and making the whole process satisfying. I want to leave you with this one final thought to chew on. Who is the person you truly want to become, and what tiny 2-minute habit will you stack today to prove it to yourself? Remember, your life a year from now is just the accumulated compound interest of the tiny choices you are making today. Choose wisely, start small, and I will see you in the next explainer.